My name is Юли Тамир. I'm the president of Beit Berl Teacher Training College. It's one of the largest teacher training colleges in Israel. Formerly, I was a Minister of Education from 2007 to 2010. I'm also teaching here in the UK at Oxford. I'm teaching on education and social justice. So I travel between the places, and I'm very happy to be here in Samърхил because I think this type of education is 100 years old, but it's actually the future. It's how education should look like in the next several years, and how we should cope with a lot of the difficulties that are now, erupting after the corona, after the big disruption in education. Actually, a model built more than 100 years ago is very relevant. Like everywhere else in the world, I think the education system has gone through a big shock during the corona, and followed by the Big Resignation. People just do not want to be teachers. The salaries are low, the social status is low, the parents put pressure on teachers. I'm sure everything I say you actually know from your own experience, because this is a global crisis. And in this crisis, we are trying to find a new position, a new role for the teachers. And that's what we do in our school. We say, okay, something is not working, there's been such a huge interruption. We need to reframe the project of teacher training. And we're trying to teach teachers differently, but also ask real questions about what it is to be a teacher these days. What do we mean when we say that, it is important for children to go to school? Why? Is it for knowledge? Is it for acquiring some social skill? Is it for emotional resilience? Is it for all these mixed together? What is the thing that we're offering children? Because unfortunately, children are the silent member of the learning community. Nobody asks them. Just shove it into schools and stay there. So we're trying to think about the children, the parents, the teachers, to have a new conversation about education. The term "the Big Resignation" refers to the fact that after the corona, a lot of people chose not to go back to work. So there are many people around the world, millions and millions of people, are just deciding not to work or not to take a permanent job. Now, teaching jobs, always their best, offer was, teaching is a good job because it's a permanent job and it's a state job. But now young people don't find it attractive. They don't want state jobs, they don't want permanent jobs, they want to move around. So the Big Resignation happens in many spheres of life, but in education it's particularly demanding, because a lot of people just don't find teaching as an attractive option for themselves. Democratic school we have a lot of democratic schools, but still it's a very small portion of the schools in Israel. I think what is very exciting about schooling in Israel is that there are many, many variations of public schools. Montessori school, democratic schools, nature school, art schools, gaming schools. So it's very popular in Israel that every school wants to be special. And when I was a minister, I decided that I don't want this to be only something that is offered to young, rich children, but to everyone. So I think this is something that the state should support. So now all these schools, all these variety of schools are state schools. And state school can define, I want to be anthroposophic, I want to be democratic, I want to be a forest school. And they all are part of the general system that is offered to all children in Israel. The result is that there is a great diversity among schools. And like every school, every municipality, every school, they want to be somehow special. So they find their way, some more successfully, some less successfully, but they define something that identifies them as a special school. Almost all schools want to be special in a way. And this creates it encourages free thinking about education, it encourages diversity, and at the end of the day, I should tell you honestly, most of them come to the same conclusion, like they think they're very special, but they do quite a conservative job. However, at least they gave it a thought. They said, okay, that's what we want to do. This is how we want to teach. This is what we want. Now, the thing that I think is most difficult for us is like any other nation, at least in the Western world, there are very strict standards. And the standard system, and especially the fact that everybody in Israel wants to go to higher education, so they need to take the final exams like the baccalaureate. And this, so school starts with a lot of freedom and diversity, and then they sort of start choking the students and sort of diverting them to the final exams. And I think we're trying to rebel against it and maybe show other ways of development for schools that will not comply with just a conservative model. The process has been going for more than 15, 20 years now as part of the, first of all, I should say two things. Israel is a society that is growing, unlike most societies in the West, and the school system grows. So every time you build a new school, they have a new idea about who they are, why they are, what are they doing. So I think the growth of the school system really encourages schools to define their mission. And that is part, which is quite unusual in the OECD countries, that you have a society that grows so fast. Now, not to be misunderstood, there are lots of problems in the Israeli school system. There's a great inequality, there's a great problem with small cultures that are not very liberal or democratic, and we have many, many problems. But I think, relatively speaking, in the mainstream there is more diversity than in other countries. I think, first of all, it's a really encouraging school to develop an identity, and it's a little bit part of the competition. Actually, schools compete for children, and they want to be offering something that has a meaning for the parents and for the children and for the teaching community. So I think one thing is to really allow schools or actually ask schools to write their own vision and explain why you should come to the school, which we always think, okay, children are assigned to the school, they don't ask questions. But Israel somehow created this kind of dialogue about what it is that I care about in schooling, and why do I want my children to.
What are my values?
What are my values? Also, a lot of parents actually choose to send the children to conservative education, to religious education, and so on. But a lot of parents also make a different decision, and they choose something that is important to them. So first of all, it's really creating the spirit of a sort of a competition between schools of really wanting to be something special, different. To be acknowledged for what they are, rather than just a structure that is imposed from above. And this is very much also the Israeli spirit of everybody wants to invent everything all the time, or reinvent. And the second thing was procedurally to help these schools be part of the system. So it's relaxing the conditions for becoming a state school. Actually, maybe Finland also acts this way. To be a state school, you have to prepare children to meet certain standards as an age group. But it's not about the curricula, and it's not about how you teach. I mean, the conservative schools will, I call them the lazy schools. They go to the ministry, and the ministry tells them what to do. But the active schools, the more innovative school, like the democratic school or the Montessori, they say, no, we don't want this curricula. We have our own ideology, and they are actually allowed to follow their ideology. Standard is about proficiencies. We want children at the end of, a certain age to be able to read, do basic math, and know a certain sort of level of English. But it's not supervising what you do in every classroom, what you teach now, what you teach then, how much you teach of it. As I said, the more you go, like you go from primary school to middle school to high school, it's not only the standard, it's the exams that ruin everything. And now there is a big movement in Israel against the final exams. And they are part of our movement, and they are actually saying, enough for the final exams, forget about them, because once you see there's lots of freedom, then there's a final exam there, and then suddenly everybody stands in line and they're all preparing to climb the ladder and meet the demands of the exam. So I think that would be also changing in the future. I don't know when. So first of all, Israel also have a long way to go to trust the teachers. These special schools we're talking about, they are full of self-confidence. They say, we know what to do, but many teachers would tell you that they want more autonomy, even in Israel. I think the state should acknowledge that in this time and age, it's very difficult to say to everyone what to learn, how to learn, where to learn. This is just ridiculous. The world doesn't work this way. The world is, and also the outcome. What do you want from your young generation? You want them to be autonomous and creative and responsible and active. If you just put them in a classroom and tell them, now you study Bulgarian history, now you study Bulgarian literature, now you study math, now you study English or Russian or whatever you teach, what is your second language, and then children become very passive. They hate it, but they don't want to rebel because they don't think anything else can happen. But if you tell them, okay, maybe this time you can decide what you want to learn. You choose something that is interesting to you. Maybe they'll choose something that the state didn't think about, but it could be relevant and interesting for them. So they become active, and there's more likelihood that they will grow to be active citizens, active individuals, innovators, and that they will think about things and have more courage to reflect about their life. I think, every system changes slowly. It's not going to be a radical step. But, for me, the first step was to say, okay, I want every school to write its own sort of vision of what they see is their educational purpose. Now, to be honest, many schools wrote the same thing because they were a product of a very traditional culture. But at least they thought about it. It was probably what the state expected them to do. But now they owned it because they had to write it and they wrote it. They said, okay, that's my vision. I said, interesting. Why did you choose it? I said, I can't say just because the state said it, because they say, the state tells me to think for myself. So I can't just repeat what people told me. So it started a dialogue in the school system about visions and about purposes. And slowly, it developed into an important dialogue. But on the other hand, you should be ready as the state to allow people to decide, say, we're a school that deals, with oceans and forests, and we're not going to teach as much history as you would like us to teach. And, say, if that's your mission, okay, go with it. Do it professionally. Really learn about the oceans and the forests, but it's okay. Well, I think the best advice is that in this era, it's very difficult to control people's mind. They find a way to think and look at other examples and information from all around the world. So I think the best thing for a government to do is to allow this search within the boundaries of public education, because otherwise it will be outside these boundaries and it will be much more destabilizing and dangerous. You want people to be reflective, let them reflect within the system. It will allow them to be much more satisfied and happy in what they do.